Wednesday show. Did that work? Yeah, sorry. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Hello, everybody. Maybe not. I'm not really sure. We are coming to you from my lovely condo. Where we're going to be doing another episode of the Wednesday show. Who knew? Let people get down here for a few seconds here while I just blab away. I don't know if you can hear me or if you're even there. I wonder how many people come on for their first time and they hear me singing and they're like, this guy thinks he's a professional singer or something. And in reality, no, I do not. I know that I'm not a professional singer. But ironically enough, back in middle school, I was in the show choir, and they used to give me solos because I was the only person who had a deeper voice. Hey, Shelly, how you doing? Yeah, so today we're going to be going through. We're going to have it so you guys are choosing the topic as usual. But before we get to that, we're gonna see, hopefully people come on. Right now, Shelly, it just might be a party for you and I tonight. We'll be talking about Disney for the next hour, just you and I. Oh, there we go. Now it's popping up saying that we got other people coming up. Yay. All right. So we're going to get this party started. We're going to start the 789th episode, which is a really big amount. The 789. So wait, we're 11 weeks away from our 800th episode. Let's find out what day that would be. What will the date be in 11 weeks from today?
It is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024.
So in 11 weeks, on December 18th, 2024, that'll be our 800th episode of the Wednesday show. Who knew? The storm turned last week and missed me. They're flooded roads, but they're okay. That's good at least. Yeah, if anyone out there got hit bad, I hope you guys are doing okay. We luckily got very lucky here in Orlando. We had a lot of rain, a lot of wind, but we didn't get anything too bad. I mean, there's a lot of debris the next morning when I woke up, but nothing awful, thankfully. But yeah, hopefully everyone out there who was in the path of the hurricane, if you're watching this, I do hope you guys are okay. I hope you're having speedy recoveries, and I hope everything is getting back for the better for you. Happy Critter Burger time. It's the greatest time. Okay, so for those of you guys who don't know, before we get into our intro, so I'm from Wisconsin, so naturally I am a massive fan of Culver's. And let me find my picture. So 3 years ago, well, 2 years ago, it was 2.5 years ago, on April Fool's Day, Culver's posted a thing about how they're going to have a special new sandwich called a Critter Burger, which would be a regular burger with a massive cheese curd on the top. And people in Wisconsin went crazy trying to get this thing. And of course, it was an April Fool's joke. So later on that year in October, when they went through and they did the National Cheese Curd Day, Culver said, okay, for one day and one day only, we're going to do this thing. It was so popular, literally, like people were lining up for like hours, maybe not hours. Well, some people were waiting for hours. I heard some Culvers, and because of that, they decided to bring the Critter Burger back. And so they brought it back last year for a limited time, and they've just brought it back starting yesterday for a limited time. I went over and I got one today. It is unbelievable. So this monstrosity at the top, that's a giant cheese curd. You can see the cheese coming out of it. It is so good that I just want to go back over and over and over and over again. It is so good. Yeah, I can't believe it. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Critter Burger time. Okay, let's get this party started. Also, while you guys are out there and you're possibly also watching the Brewers game. If you guys can give us updates on the Brewers game too. I've got it on like a different screen here. Right now it's 3-2 in the bottom of the sixth. They do need to make it a full-time thing. 100%, Eric. That would make the world go round. Okay, let's get into okay, tonight's episode is going to be all about the Culver's Critter Burger. We're going to talk about all the different tastiness that it has. No, let's get this party started. We're going to start the 789th episode of The Wednesday Show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 789th episode of The Wednesday Show. Today is October 2nd, 2024, and I'm your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today we're going to be going through and talking all about Disney. You guys are going to choose the topics, but before we get to that, let's talk about our news for the week. First off, thank you to everyone out there who's been joining us for our Saturday in the Park. If you didn't already know, every single Saturday we do a live broadcast from someplace found throughout the Walt Disney World Resort. You never know where we're going to be coming to you from, but I promise you we will always be coming to you live from Disney. Last week we came live from the Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy over at Disney's Hollywood Studios before it closes up. This is coming up Saturday. I believe we're going to be over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, so make sure you join us every single Saturday so you don't miss out on all that Disney fun. And of course, speaking of YouTube, as always, if we go into more subscribers as the evening goes on here, we will go into extra innings as well. We are starting off at 7,939 subscribers. I want to hit 8,000 so bad and sometime very soon. So keep on sending your friends over to subscribe as well. Like this video on both Facebook and on YouTube, because that actually does help out massively of us potentially getting more subscribers as well. So if you've not liked it, give it a like. Yay. Okay, let's get... Oh, and as always, wait a minute. As always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. That's all I got. Thank you, our Patreon pals. If you're one of our Patreon pals in the chat room right now, give us an oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, let's get this party started. So tonight we're going to be going through and we're going to be having it so you guys choose one of the topics. You're going to be the 3 topics you can choose from for what you want to have in our thing tonight. There's one of our Patreon pals there. Hey, howdy. Hey, Joe. How you doing? Okay, so 3 topics. We could do a little bit of a history of Magic Kingdom in honor of its 53rd anniversary being yesterday. We can have it so we can do a closer look at a specific attraction, or as always, a default of ask me or ask the expert, where you can ask me about anything and everything Disney. There's another one of our Patreon pals right there. Oh yeah. Okay, so you guys have about, let's say 90 seconds to throw your votes in. That's going to give us up to 9:30 of this broadcast time right here. So the options are a history of the Magic Kingdom, where you guys can actually, we can do some audience participation, have it so you guys figure out exactly what you want to be talking about here when it comes to the Magic Kingdom. We can go through a deep dive of a specific attraction, or we can do an Ask the Expert, where we will talk about anything and everything Disney. So throw your votes into the comments right now, and we will start to go through. Okay, we got 1 vote for Closer Luck. We'll see if it's going to be Living with Land, but Closer Luck, we got 1 for the history of the Magic Kingdom. Let's keep those votes coming up right now. We still have 45 seconds left to throw your votes in, so throw them in right now. Otherwise, it's just going to be 2 people who are like fighting over each other. We got another vote for the history of the Magic Kingdom. That gives us the 2-1 vote with 28 seconds left on the voting clock. What is going to win? I have no idea. I've got a feeling it might be the history of the Magic Kingdom, though. Maybe, just maybe. Should we get Windows on Main Street? Well, that's not that'd be a Closer Look. We can do that as a Closer Look. So we got 2 Closer Looks, and we got another history of Magic Kingdom. You got 3, 2, 1, 0, 9:30. Okay, that is going to be our wrap up. We are going to be doing a history of Magic Kingdom today. Okay, so while we go through here, I do want to have it so you guys out there are throwing things at me throughout the evening about what you want to have us to go into more detail about, what you would like to know more about for the history, and we will kind of go through from there. But of course, as any good Disney story starts once upon a time. Once upon a time, way back in the year 1953. So back in 1953, Walt Disney started to come up with the idea. Well, he had already kind of had the idea back in 1951 of a Mickey Mouse style theme park, and it was going to be called the Mickey Mouse Park. Yeah, very creative. But he was going to have a Mickey Mouse park, and when he was going to do this Mickey Mouse park, um, he was going to have it so it was going to be on the studio lot, and there was not a ton of really exciting things about it. I mean, there was a haunted house, there was going to be a castle, there was going to be a hot air balloon ride, and a lot of other things like that. However, of course, because the studio lot was not big enough to hold what they were thinking a lot of guests would want to go to, he decided that they were going to build a little place called Disneyland instead. So Disneyland opened up in 1955, and when it opened up in 1955, it became an immediate smash hit. I mean, of course, it had its follies and stuff, but overall, Disneyland was a very, very successful thing, and it still is to this very day. However, as time went on, more and more people started to go through and build up things around Disneyland, which Walt Disney did not like. I don't really like that either when I go out to Disneyland, because instead of having a big, open, honest feeling, honest, I don't know why I said honest, but having a big, open feeling of being in the most magical, right over there, it's the happiest place on earth. But having it so you're over at the happiest place on earth, but then you go outside and there's like, the Radisson, you're like, yeah, okay, it's not great, it's not amazing, but it's pretty nice. As time was going on, Walt Disney decided that he needed to have more and more land. So he did a little experiment back in 1964. So back in the 1964 World's Fair, who knew we could get back to this topic? We talk about this quite often. But at the 1964 World's Fair, it was Walt Disney's first idea of putting, some output out there. I don't know what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. I just don't know what I'm talking about in that sentence. He decided to have it so he was going to put himself out there and see if the East Coast of the United States was just as impressed as the West Coast of the United States with Disney attractions. So at the 1964 World's Fair, they submitted 4 attractions. They had the Ford Motor Speedway, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, It's a Small World, and of course, the Carousel of Progress. These 4 became the 4 most popular attractions at the World's Fair, with thousands upon millions of people actually going on these 4 attractions. So when this happened, of course, Walt said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to build a little place called Walt Disney World. And he decided that it was going to be over in Florida. Of course, that was not like his original idea. He kind of went through all these different things. At one point, they were looking at South Carolina, they were looking at Texas, they were looking at Louisiana, and of course, eventually they would settle on Florida, right outside the window. And so when they would go through and they would bring it here to Orange County / Osceola County, they decided that the best thing they could do is come up with a brand new concept that's never been done before, where an entire corporation is going to create an amazing city, and they're going to call it an experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Or the first time Walt actually introduced it to the public, he called it the experimental prototype city of tomorrow. But after that, he always said community. So that's what we always referred to it as, even though the first thing he ever referred to it as was city. So confusing, I know, but still at the same time, there are some times when people go through and they say experimental prototype city of tomorrow. And I'm like, you know what? You're not really wrong, even though everyone will say community, because Walt Disney himself said city at one point. Completely irrelevant, but let's keep on talking about Epcot here for a second, because that's what that experimental prototype community of tomorrow would be an acronym for, is Epcot. I know what you're thinking. I love Epcot. Spaceship Earth. Yes, Spaceship Earth. Yay. But Epcot is not exactly what Epcot was originally supposed to be. Instead, Epcot was going to be something much bigger. So the entire idea of Walt Disney World was going to be this massive city. And in this massive city, we would have multiple layers. We would have a place where people could work, a place where people could live. Even the roadways below hand would have it so there'd be places where regular pedestrians like ourselves could be driving along in completely traffic-free conditions. It's the dream. That is an experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Then on a completely different level, you would have people who are doing food deliveries. And they'd be going through and delivering different things to different businesses and different things like that. It wasn't just going to be like Uber Eats. It was going to be everything. And then on another level, you would have people who are just commuting to work. So you would have it so there was like roads on top of roads on top of roads, and each specific road was made for a different specific type of person. In addition to this, we would have amazing things like monorails and people movers and people movers and people movers and people movers everywhere, and everything in the world was going to be perfect because of how many people movers we were going to have. Then on top of all of that, they decided that, you know what, in addition to this, we also want to have it so there is going to be a Disneyland style theme park. Now, starting back in 1955, people started to refer to Disneyland as Walt Disney's Magical Kingdom, or sometimes they would just call it Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom. So they decided that the perfect thing that they could do is name this specific park the Magic Kingdom. Now, this Magic Kingdom was going to be found on the very northern end of property, mainly due to the fact that this would take it away from the city vibes, and this could be the vacation kingdom of the world. So people could go up there, they could go stay at one of the many resorts. Of course, you know what we're talking about. We're talking about the Venetian, the Polynesian. Wait, the Venetian? What on earth are you talking about? Well, at one point, they're actually going to have it so there's going to be a hotel called the Venetian Hotel, and I know what you're thinking right now. Well, yeah, but they actually have a Venetian hotel over in Las Vegas. That is 100% true, and that's actually 100% Disney. That entire concept was actually a Disney concept, and the Imagineers actually sold it to a different contractor who actually built it over in Las Vegas. Fun fact of the day. So they're going to go through and they're going to have all these different hotels around this man-made thing called the Seven Seas Lagoon. And then, of course, they were also going to have Bay Lake, which was an actual lake that was already sitting there. In addition to this, they're going to have different things where you could go through and you could go I was going to say jet skiing, but not jet skiing. You could go water skiing, you could go parasailing, and there were so many other amazing things they could do. And then at the northern end of all of it was the Magic Kingdom. Now, the Magic Kingdom was not going to be a complete duplicate of what we would have over in Disneyland, but instead we would have it so it was going to be a, Disneyland 2.0, or some people think it's a Disneyland 0.5. I don't know. Some people like Disneyland better, some people like Magic Kingdom better. It doesn't matter. They're all Disney parks. I love them all. Now, what they decided to do was, because of the differences between Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom, they wanted to have it so, yes, there would be similarities, but they also wanted to have it so everything would be completely different in the same way, shape, or form. I know what you're thinking. How does this make sense? Well, let's explain it. Okay, so first off, we're going to have the same set of lands that we had over in Disneyland on opening day. That would be Main Street USA, Adventureland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland. Now, between when Disneyland opened up and the Magic Kingdom opened up, they had added a land or two or three or seven throughout the years. Obviously, New Orleans Square would be the one that would actually be sitting there and was still sticking around to this very day. But we also had Mickey Circus Land. We also had things like Holiday Land. There was a lot of different lands. There were temporary lands. They were around for maybe 3, 4, sometimes 5 months, and then they would close down and they would build something else in those places. And it was just kind of this ever-changing thing until eventually Disneyland said, hey, you know what? We're doing too many changes. We have to kind of sit on one complete idea and just stay on that idea for the rest of all time. So when they built the Magic Kingdom, they said, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to have it so it's the same kind of concept. We're going to have those 5 main lands: Main Street USA, Adventureland, Frontierland, Liberty Square. Ignore that for the second because we're going to get to that in just a second. Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. And then they said, you know what? 5 is nice, but 6 is better. So why don't we have it so we have a 6th land that is exclusive to the Magic Kingdom and it'll never be reproduced ever again. So what they decided to do, they went back to some concept art that they had done back in the 1950s / the 1960s. Because back in the 1950s and the 1960s, Walt Disney had an idea that was an amazing idea. Actually, some of the Imagineers had this idea, and they would go through and create a brand new concept art for a street that went off of Main Street USA behind Tomorrowland, and it would be called Liberty Street. What? Now, in Liberty Street, they would have an attraction called the Hall of Presidents. I know what you're thinking. I know that ride, and yes, you do. But they would also have a town crier walking around. They would have it so there was going to be people who were impersonating Ben Franklin and Mark Twain and all these different classic historical figures, and everyone could learn about the history of America. But it was scrapped. They said, you know what? We really like this idea. We just, one, don't have the land, we don't have the money, we don't have the time to build these things right now. And right around the same time, they started to work on the 1964 World's Fair. So they decided that they're going to start working on, I know what you're thinking, Liberty Square, Liberty Square, Liberty Square. Well, let's take a little break and talk about something else, because we have to talk about a bunch of things to get to the opening day of the Magic Kingdom. I think a lot of people out there right now are like, I had no idea that this guy could go on and on and on and not even get to the opening of Magic Kingdom when we're talking about the history of the Magic Kingdom. But don't worry, people, we're going to get there. Okay, so around the same time, in the 1960s, Walt Disney was invited to do something that had never been done before by a company, and it completely changed the course of history, not just American history, but the history of the world. That's right, we're talking about that's the Olympics theme song. So Walt Disney was asked to be the person who would present the opening and the closing ceremonies of the Olympics. Great idea. So when he actually would go through and do this, prior to this, the Olympics opening and closing ceremonies was literally like people walking down. They're like, and light the torch. Okay, good game, everybody. It was very boring, very dull, and not many people ever tuned in. However, there was this, little hubbub going around when they said, hey, wait, Walt Disney is going to be going through and he's going to be creating the opening and closing ceremonies, and he's the master of making great storytelling. So let's all tune into this amazing program. So when all these people started to tune into this amazing program, and it was an amazing program because of it, we now have these outlandishly amazing opening and closing ceremonies for the Olympics. When he did this, he was staying at a nice little lodge. And while he was sitting at this nice little lodge, he was thinking about all of the amazing things that he could do while relaxing at a nice little ski lodge. And he came up with an idea. Now, there's a little thing that he came up with, which was going to be called the Mineral King Ski Resort. And the Mineral King Ski Resort, it's so funny, because all I can hear right now is there's one person who sometimes will write to me afterwards, and they go, it's ridiculous how we choose the topic and you can still ramble on for an hour about the topic that we chose. Well, guess what, people? I'm doing it again. And sometimes it just makes me laugh. One of my coworkers, by the way, she'll watch the shows afterwards and she'll tell me, she's like, the next day at work, she's like, so I watched your show and I don't know how people can just throw these topics at you. And you're like, oh, by the way, let's talk about this for the next hour. So that's what we're doing right now. We're talking about the history of the Magic Kingdom. Oh, I just saw it. Someone said history on Frontierland. History on the entire Magic Kingdom. Okay, let's keep on going. Okay, so during the Mineral King Ski Resort, he said, you know what would be great is if we could actually build our very own ski resort that is created by the Disney company and have it so there's going to be amazing things. Obviously, there's going to be skiing, there's going to be food, there's going to be fireplaces. But in the middle of the lobby, we're going to have an amazing show called the Country Bear Jamboree. And I know what you're thinking. I know that one too. I know that one too. So let's get into that one. We're going to get into Liberty Square, and we're going to talk about a few other things. So in 1966, things are going at full steam, and we are finally getting the ideas and the plans and everything else together for what will eventually become the Magic Kingdom over here at Walt Disney World. And while things are going full steam, Walt Disney sadly passes away. Now, when Walt Disney passes away, a lot of the Imagineers had no idea where they were going to go from that point forward, because obviously they have lost their leader, they've lost the conductor of this amazing train that was powering through and creating something amazing, things like Epcot, like an actual city that the Disney company is creating. So when they're going through and trying to come up with the ideas of what to do now, a few things began to change. Now, the first thing that began to change was the idea of Epcot. They said, you know what, we can't really do this entire city thing because we don't have the leader who came up with the city idea. So let's just put that on the back burner for right now. Let's focus on what we know. We know how to do hotels because we've got a hotel. We know how to do a park because we've got a park. So let's just focus on those things right now, and then we'll see what we can do from there on out. So the ideas started to come together. They said, okay, we're going to build 2 resorts because we don't know if we're going to need anymore. So let's build a Polynesian resort, and we're also going to build a contemporary resort. And then let's go back to those basic ideas of what we're going to have in Disneyland, and let's bring in some other ideas as well. Now, the Mineral King Ski Resort idea was scrapped early on, mainly due to the fact that the people that were in the area where the lodge was going to be built said, we don't want Disney here. We only want to have it so this is just a completely natural area and not the Disney Corporation. So when that happened, some Imagineers, Mark Davis specifically, started to come together and they said, you know what? What if we actually took that idea of those country bears that Walt Disney loved so much? It was considered Walt Disney's last laugh. What if we take these guys together and we bring them to this brand new park? And they said, that's a great idea. Walt Disney saw it. He approved it. Let's put it in there. So they decided, okay, in Frontierland, we're gonna have the Country Bear Jamboree. What else can we put in there? Now, Tom Sawyer Island was a massive hit over in Disneyland. However, when it opened up at Magic Kingdom, they said, you know what? We're not sure if the Tom Sawyer Island thing's going to work. So let's just put that on the back burner for right now. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to put a steam engine that goes around the island. We'll maybe eventually work on Tom Sawyer Island. We're not really sure. But let's put a steam engine there because it works over here. We'll also give Mike Fink keelboats. We'll do the Davy Crockett riverboat. So we said, okay, that's all good. They also created the Frontierland Shooting Arcade because it was such a success over in Disneyland. They also built a mile-long bar, which was just a short bar, but it had 2 mirrors on each side, so it looked like it was a mile long. And why don't we also throw in one of those lovable characters that everyone knows about, Pecos Bill? Because at that point, Pecos Bill was not that old of a film, so a lot of people actually would have known Pecos Bill from Pecos Bill's Tall Tale Inn and Cafe. So we had Frontierland set. Now, the next concept that we have to work on is the idea of Liberty Square. Now, again, when Walt was alive, he had the idea of Liberty Street, and they wanted to bring that Liberty Street idea into Disneyland. But when they were going through and creating Liberty Street and the concept for it, they had this idea of the Hall of Presidents and having every single president up on stage and talking to you, the people who are actually visiting the park. And what they decided to do was they couldn't use the technology when they wanted to use it, but instead they had the technology to make great moments with Mr. Lincoln. And that would help propel them forward just 7 years later when the Magic Kingdom would open up. So they contacted Blaine Gibson, master sculptor. Blaine Gibson, you know what I'm talking about? Maybe, probably not. No, but I bet a lot of you guys do. So Blaine Gibson was the guy who would go through and he'd carve all the faces for every character that's in the Haunted Mansion, every character that's in Pirates of the Caribbean, and then every president here at the Hall of Presidents at the Magic Kingdom. So they finally had that Hall of Presidents. In addition to that, they would have the steam engine that would go around. And then on top of that, they would have one more attraction. Now, this attraction would be built at the same time when a lot of different things were being built in Disneyland for the exact same attraction. In fact, it's actually the first time that a Disney attraction was being worked on for 2 completely separate parks at the same time. Of course, the attraction I'm talking about is the Haunted Mansion. So the Haunted Mansion would have a lot of the same elements from its counterpart in Disneyland. However, the one at Magic Kingdom would be a little bit longer. It would also have it so it would feature a house that was not based in New Orleans, but it would be featured on a house that'd be found in upstate New York. So that way it can fit into Liberty Square, which would focus solely on the 13 original colonies. So we have Liberty Square, we have Frontierland. Let's talk about Adventureland. Because in Adventureland, we would have a few different ideas that weren't really completely concrete at the start. Now, our first thing we would have is Tropical Serenade. We all know Tropical Serenade. We all love Tropical Serenade. And I'm sure some people out there are going, what's Tropical Serenade, Brent? You got to tell us. Okay, Tropical Serenade, or you might know it as the Enchanted Tiki Room, was an attraction that would be pretty much the Enchanted Tiki Room, except for if you ever go through and you watch the pre-show for Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room right now, one of the birds, Clyde, says, "It's a real Tropical Serenade." This is a nod to the original attraction that was here, which was essentially the same attraction that it is right now. We're going to go into that history in just a minute as well as we go through the further history of the entire park. Hi, Dinos King. So when we also got that, we had Tropical Serenade because the Enchanted Tiki Room was the first use ever of the animatronics over in Disneyland. It was a massive hit, so might as well duplicate that one as well. We also had the Swiss Family Treehouse because that was a massive hit over in Disneyland. And then the final attraction was actually Walt Disney's favorite attraction in Disneyland, which would be the Jungle Cruise. So we had Adventureland complete. I know what a lot of you guys are thinking right now. What about Pirates of the Caribbean? We're going to get to that because that was not around on opening day, but we'll talk a little bit about it in just a second. Moving on up to Fantasyland. Up in Fantasyland, they wanted to have it so there was going to be some similarities that were going to be, to what Disneyland was, but at the same time, not completely duplicate. Now, first thing they wanted to have a carousel. And let's talk about the carousel here for a second, because I think the history of the carousel is one of the most interesting histories of all time. Roy Disney was the guy who said, we need to have a carousel. This is Walt Disney's younger brother. Or not younger brother, older brother. But I was thinking of the nephew for a second. But his older brother said, Walt Disney wanted to have a carousel in Disneyland. We need to have a carousel at Magic Kingdom as well. So they found a castle, or not a castle, they found a carousel from a toboggan company, or it's called the Toboggan Company, the New Jersey Toboggan Company, created it back in 1917. The Imagineers found it, they refurbished it, and they placed it here. Now, one of the really cool, interesting things about this specific carousel is when they placed it inside of Fantasyland, they actually placed it off center a little bit. It looked on center from the rest of Fantasyland. However, Roy Disney himself was on a Main Street USA looking through the carousel, and he noticed that through the castle, and he noticed that the carousel was a little off center. So he actually personally made sure that that carousel was moved like 2 feet to the right, and that way the carousel would be center when you're walking down Main Street USA. So we had a carousel. We were also going to have Dumbo because Dumbo is the heart and the soul of Fantasyland. We also had the Mad Tea Party because that was one of the classic attractions that was around since opening day over in Disneyland. In addition to this, they decided to bring over four classic attractions from Disneyland. Of course, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Snow White's Scary Adventures, Peter Pan's Flight, and It's a Small World. In addition to this, they decided to have another attraction that was made specifically for the Magic Kingdom. This and the Country Bear Jamboree would be our first two. This would be called the Mickey Mouse Revue, which sat where the current home of Mickey's PhilharMagic currently sits, and it would feature several different audimatronics singing songs, having a grand old time, and just singing the zippity-doo-dah, which would be the grand finale. So in addition to this, they would also have it so there would be a Skyway bucket that would go from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland and from Tomorrowland to Fantasyland. But right now we're taking it from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland, so let's go to Tomorrowland. So over in Tomorrowland, we would have a few different things that are still around to this day. And when I say a few, I mean one. We had a Speedway. Much like Autopia over in Disneyland, we did get a Tomorrowland Speedway over in the Magic Kingdom. In addition to this, we would have things like Mission to Mars, Delta Dream Flight, and that was about it. There was not a whole lot of stuff going on in Tomorrowland, much like how there was not a lot of stuff going on in Tomorrowland over in Disneyland when it first opened up. So let's flash forward because we want to talk about the history of Disneyland or the Magic Kingdom, and I just spent literally the first 32 minutes going on and on and on just about the prehistory. So let's get into the history of the Magic Kingdom. While we go through here and continue, if you guys have any questions out there, feel free to throw those questions in the comments, or if you just want to continue to hear me ramble, just continue to hear me ramble. Oh, one last thing that actually was going to be around on opening day, and it's still around on, it was around on opening day, and it's still around today, is the Walt Disney World Railroad. Much like the Disneyland train that goes around the entire park, they figured that it just makes sense to have a train due to Walt Disney's love of trains and have it go around the park as well. When the park first opened up, there was going to be two different stops that guests could make on the Walt Disney World Railroad. There was Main Street USA and there was Frontierland, but that was it. There was nothing else. We did not have the other section of the park yet, and so we're going to talk about that when we get through the history. So as time would go on, all of these lands would begin to evolve into what they are currently today. Our first big evolution would be in 1973 when we had a brand new attraction featuring several different pirates come out called Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, the reason Pirates of the Caribbean was not around on opening day was due to the fact that it was not going to be around at all. There was no plans to ever bring Pirates of the Caribbean to the Magic Kingdom. However, one of the very first times that Walt Disney was ever found on a broadcast of the Disneyland television series, he talked about Pirates of the Caribbean. And when he talked about Pirates of the Caribbean, all of the people who were watching were like, hey, that sounds like a great ride. So when Magic Kingdom opened up, a lot of guests went to the Magic Kingdom. They said, where's Pirates of the Caribbean? They said, oh, we figured figured people wouldn't want to go to Pirates of the Caribbean because you could go to the Caribbean just by driving down to the ocean. Not a great idea. So they realized their mistake and they decided that they were going to take Pirates of the Caribbean and make a shorter version because, one, we've got, swampland here in Florida. So because of that, you couldn't have it so it goes down as far as it did over in Disneyland. And they were going to make it a little bit shorter because they wanted to get this attraction out because so many people were complaining that this attraction was not around. So with that, we got Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, in addition to that, the history of Adventureland didn't evolve a ton as time would go on. Back in the late 1990s, actually it was early 2000s, we would get a brand new attraction in the center of Adventureland known as Aladdin's Magic Carpets, or Flying Carpets, Magic Carpets, Aladdin's Magic Carpets, the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. That's it. And then over in the Enchanted Tiki Room, or as we said, Tropical Serenade, they realized was kind of boring to guests. Not a lot of people were really enjoying the birds. So they decided to spruce things up a little bit and have it so we would get two new managers of the Enchanted Tiki Room in the forms of Iago from the film Aladdin and Zazu from the film The Lion King. And these two would be in a brand new attraction, which would be called the Enchanted Tiki Room under new management. I personally really liked it. I liked when they sang, "Do you rock and roll?" That's how he danced too. That was Iago dancing. Eventually, a small fire, mysterious fire. A lot of people were getting sick of this attraction. And then this mysterious fire came shortly after all these people were complaining online about how they should change it to the original one. It's still very mysterious in my mind. It's been like 13 years, but it's weird. A lot of people, though, complained about this attraction so much online. And then, sure enough, this mysterious fire came and ruined the stuff that created made the animatronics move. And so the Imagineers decided that they were just going to cancel that attraction and bring back the original attraction, but make it a little bit shorter. And that's how we got Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. Still mysterious. Okay, going into Frontierland. Now, Frontierland has gone through a lot. a lot of transformations throughout the years. Now, obviously, we've had the Country Bear Jamboree still sitting around from, opening day all the way until today. However, it stuck around for about 11 years there, and then it switched over to a new Country Bear Jamboree with the Vacation Hoedown, and then we got a Christmas edition. Then it would switch back to the Country Bear Jamboree, and then we would have it so the Country Bear Jamboree and the Vacation Hoedown were switching out, and then the Christmas edition would come in, and then eventually they realized that not many people are going to the Vacation Hoedown, so they decided to get rid of that completely and have it so it's going to be the original and also switching out with the Christmas one. And then eventually they realized that maybe the Country Bear Jamboree just isn't popular enough to shut it down and have it so all this maintenance is done on it to bring in a winter edition. And so they got rid of the winter edition, and then they shortened up the show, and then also they decided that what they're going to do instead was have it so they would go through and have it so the Country Bear Jamboree would be completely remodeled, and they would close it in January of this year and make it into the Country Bear Musical Jamboree. That was a long history in a very short period of time. In addition to that, we also had it to the Frontierland Junior Arcade would be around from way back on opening day up until this year when it would close down to eventually make way for a Disney Vacation Club lounge. It's the only thing that I'm not happy about. In addition to that, in 1973, we would have it so we would get our first attraction that was added to the park in addition to Pirates of the Caribbean, but this would be a few months beforehand, which would be Tom Sawyer Island, which guys can still enjoy to this very day. Unfortunately, it will be closing up sometime next year, but you can still enjoy it to this very day. In 1980, we would get our first big e-ticket attraction on this side of the park, and that attraction would be Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And then 12 years later, we would get Splash Mountain as well. Now, fun fact, thank you for the update. I really appreciate it. I've got it on a different thing there, but yes, keep me updated, please. I greatly appreciate that, Eric. But No, no, wait. Let's see here. Yeah, 3-3, bottom of the eighth. Okay, so um, if they lose today, by the way, people, they're out. That's why I'm glad that we have some updates going on. Okay, so when we would go through, eventually, so Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was originally actually supposed to be a attraction that was exclusive to the Magic Kingdom, and then because the concept art for it was being kind of shuffled around, they would eventually open it up over in Disneyland first, and then open it up at Magic Kingdom. So it was made specifically for the Magic Kingdom, but it actually opened up in Disneyland first. Who knew? So there are people out there who would be like, "Yeah, well, we got Big Thunder Mountain Railroad first. It's an original." Those are the Disneyland people I know who are like, all gun ho that it's better than Walt Disney World, the Magic Kingdom, etc., etc., etc. I don't understand why some of these people just can't understand that we can love both of them equally. I love both of them. I really do. I love Disneyland. I love Magic Kingdom. I love them both. But let's continue on with my rambling. Okay, so as we go through and talk about Frontierland, let's head over to Liberty Square. So over in Liberty Square, opening day, we had Hall of Presidents. We had the Liberty Bell Riverboat. We also had the Haunted Mansion. It's the only land that's never changed. It's literally been the same thing since it opened up. And I love that about Liberty Square. I love the fact that Liberty Square has stood the test of time and nothing really has changed about this amazing, amazing, amazing land. And if you want to know more about this land, please check out my book. Oh, that's the wrong book. Check out my book. Or, any of these lands. We got the history. We got the stuff. We got lots of pages about all of these different things. So, it's a little advertisement. Self-promotion. Okay, so up in Fantasyland, we've had a lot of different transformation. But at the same time, we have not had a lot of transformation. But at the same time, we've had a ton of transformation. But before we talk about this transformation, we have to talk about a different transformation to make this transformation make sense. So let's talk about the other transformation, and then we'll scoot back to Fantasyland. Imagine the year 1988. Little Brent Dodge is 4 years old, and he goes to Disneyland, or not Disneyland, to Disney World. When he goes to Disney World, he is ecstatic. He wants to see all of his favorite characters, and when he is there, he vividly remembers seeing one of the coolest characters of all, Minnie Moo. That's right, Minnie Moo, a cow that was born with a giant spot on its side that was a perfect hidden Mickey. So Minnie Moo was Minnie Moo's from a different farm. They didn't create Minnie Moo. She was just shipped over here, and she called the Magic Kingdom home for years and years and years until eventually she made her way to Fort Wilderness, where she lived out the rest of her days. Oh, isn't that sweet? But in 1988, Minnie Moo, along with a bunch of other residents, would move into the Magic Kingdom in honor of Mickey's birthday. That's right. In honor of Mickey Mouse's 60th birthday, we got a brand new land. And this was the first time we got a brand new land in the Magic Kingdom. And this brand new land would be called Mickey's Birthday Land. Now, Mickey's Birthday Land invited people to go in and go to like a fair type festival. And while they were there, they could find different things like cardboard cutouts of different characters. I have pictures with a lot of them. And overall, it was a fun time. Now, 2 years later, they realized they were celebrating Mickey's birthday for way too long, so they decided to switch it up to Mickey's Starland, and Mickey's Starland eventually would have a massive transformation of it as well, and then eventually would become Mickey's Toontown Fair. Now, with Mickey's Toontown Fair, it became more of a permanent residence. We got things like Mickey's house, Minnie's house, the Barnstormer, Donald's boat, and then, of course, an amazing little playground, and then a giant circus tent with character meet and greets and merchandise and just a lot of fun. I loved Mickey's Toontown Fair. Unfortunately, Mickey's Toontown Fair was not destined to be around forever. But something else was changing. So in order to talk about that, we have to go back to Fantasyland. So let's talk a little bit about the history of Fantasyland, because up until about 1982, we had things like Mickey Mouse Revue over there. And Mickey Mouse Revue was a huge hit. And it was so popular that they decided that they needed to close it down. What? And send it off to Tokyo, because Tokyo would be opening up the following year in 1983. And they wanted to have it so Mickey Mouse Revue would be over there instead. kind of a bummer. So I've never seen it. I never will see it, and it bums me out to this day that the only time I will ever see this attraction is through YouTube. It's the only time. And it's still like literally that's one of those things that I was like, oh, if I could just go back in time and watch Mickey Mouse review, that is one of the things I would do if I had a time machine and I could go back in time to look at any history of Disney and see anything. Also, score update. Yes. Okay, that's exciting. Keep us updated, Eric. Um, I also, by the way, I had to check the score just to make sure you weren't lying. But I know you wouldn't lie about this stuff. These are the important things in life. Um, I should have worn my Brewers hat. I was wearing my Brewers hat at the park today, but anyways, okay, let's continue. So when that would close down, they would have it so this area would be rethemed into a completely different show. They actually started to show different 3D shows in there, like Working for Peanuts, which is actually the first time that Disney ever did a 3D show, but that was back in the 1950s. It was a cartoon where Donald Duck and Chip and Dale were working at a zoo, or Donald were working at a zoo, and Chip and Dale were just causing havoc. So they brought that there. They also brought over Magic Journeys, which was a 3D show from Epcot, and eventually would close at Epcot to make way for Captain EO, so they would bring it over here. And then they would close it down for Legend of the Lion King, which was a puppet show, and it still holds the record for most performances ever by a cast. And then that would close down and make way for Mickey's PhilharMagic. Obviously, Peter Pan's Flight is still around. The Skyway would close down eventually. And then over across the way, we have It's a Small World, which is still going strong to this day. Cinderella's Golden Carousel would eventually become Prince Charming's Regal Carousel, and then Snow White's Scary Adventures would close up in 2011 to make way for a brand, or 2012, I'm sorry, to make way for a brand new Princess Meet and Greet area, which would be the Princess Meet and Greet area. In 1998, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride would close up to make way for a new attraction, which would be called The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and then 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I forgot to mention earlier, which would be sitting across from that, would close up for a brand new thing. Now, this brand new thing is the thing that we were talking about when we talked about Toontown, and we're talking about here. It would be the biggest expansion in the history of Walt Disney World, well, inside of a park that was already established. And this big addition was going to be called New Fantasyland. Now, New Fantasyland would open up in 2012, 2013. And when it would open up, we would have it so we would get a bunch of brand new things like Storytime with Belle. It's a cool show. We would get Be Our Guest Restaurant. We would also get the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. And then we would also get Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid. In addition to this, now we would have it so Mickey's Toontown Fair would become Fantasyland, even though a lot of people don't realize that it is part of Fantasyland. But that would be the Storybook Circus area, which actually technically is part of Fantasyland. And in that, we would still have the Barnstormer, which would just be completely rethemed. And then Dumbo would move from its location in the heart of Fantasyland out to the circus-themed area. And in addition to all that, we would also get the Casey Jr. Splash and Soak. Moving into Tomorrowland, because Tomorrowland has a lot of history. Now, eventually we'd have it so Delta Dream Flight would switch out and it would become many different things throughout the years. We would have it so it would be Take Flight, it would become Dream Flight, it would become Flight, and then eventually it would become Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, and Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin is still going strong to this day. Over at Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, before that it was called the Timekeeper, before that was called America the Beautiful, and before that it was a bunch of nothing. So across the way in a spot that's now completely empty, eventually it would become Stitch's Great Mistake or Escape, whatever you want to call it. I call it Mistake because it was a huge mistake. Prior to that, it was the Alien Encounter, or the Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter. Eventually, it would, or before that, it would be Mission to Mars. It was also going to be Mission to Mars. What was the other one? I'm drawing a blank here. The first time all night too. We went 49 minutes, and now I'm drawing a blank. Okay. Completely ignore that. What's it called though? It's driving me crazy. That's going to drive me crazy. We'll ignore it for now. In the center area, we would have the Star Jets, which would open up in 1973. Eventually, the Star Jets would close up, and they would become the Astro Orbiter. And when they became the Astro Orbiter, they became a classic attraction, but not really. But I think one of the most fascinating things about the Astro Orbiter is because the Astro Orbiter was popular enough over at the Magic Kingdom, it actually was brought over to Disneyland as well. That was actually not there at Disneyland around opening day until all the way into the 1990s. I think it was 1998 it opened up in Disneyland, but don't quote me on that exactly. In 1975, it would be the biggest year in the history of Tomorrowland because in that year, we would open up our first thrill attraction inside of Walt Disney World, which would be Space Mountain, opening up over in the end of Tomorrowland. Eventually, would make its way over to Disneyland as well, and Disneyland Paris and Tokyo, and it's a popular attraction now. And in addition to that, we would also get the People Mover, one of my favorite attractions, and we would also have it so the Carousel of Progress would close up over in Disneyland and make its way over to the Magic Kingdom, and that's where it still sits to this day. Now, let's talk a little bit about a quick history about Carousel of Progress. That still kind of bums me out to this day, because right now there's a lot of people out there who are celebrating the fact that the Carousel of Progress is getting new seats. Yes, I do think that the Carousel of Progress needed new seats. The current seats were not the most comfortable seats, but out of every single attraction that can be found inside the Magic Kingdom, there's only one attraction and one attraction only where Walt Disney personally sat in the seats of, and that was the original seats that are now being taken out at Carousel of Progress. That was the only attraction that he actually sat at. So when you sat in one of those seats, there was a very high chance that you could have been sitting in the same seat as Walt Disney. Okay, and that, my friends, is a very short very short history of the Magic Kingdom. There was a lot of stuff that we probably did not even cover. But actually, now that I'm thinking about, like, we had the Swan Boats. The Swan Boats were one of the attractions that can be found over at the hub area of Magic Kingdom. So if you were looking at the castle on the right-hand side, there used to be this path that went down towards the water. You could get into these Swan Boats. They were only piloted by females, and they would take you on the little waterway that would go around the moat in that area. Eventually, they would disappear as well. Yo, that light guy. So, any questions out there? Because I just rambled a lot for about 45 minutes. So if you guys have any questions out there, start throwing those questions into the comments below. I'm also checking the score right now. Top of the ninth, 2 outs. What? It says 2 outs. I think my app is broken here, or that website's not working. It's not. My app is. Wait, did they just win? I think they just won. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I'm very confused. This app's not updating. It says 3 outs, top of the ninth. Brewers win. Yes. Okay. There we go. Yay. And you were all there. Okay. That's very exciting. Okay. Anyone out there have any questions? Oh, I just got the update from ESPN too. ESPN just wrote to me. Brewers win. Oh, wait, anyone out there have any questions about the history of the Magic Kingdom? We spent a lot of time on the prehistory of Magic Kingdom. I'm trying to think of other things that we did not cover there, because I know that there's some attractions like Mike Fing's Killboat. So I mentioned Mike Fing's Killboats actually had a few different spots that you could actually load on. At one point, you could load over in Liberty Square, then eventually it became Frontierland, and then it was eventually nowhere at all. However, you can still find 2 spots where the Mike Fing's Killboat still exists. One of them is the little pirate ship that is found over at the Pirates area, Liberty Bell River Road. On the right-hand side, you can see a Mike Fing's Killboat there. However, yesterday it was no longer there, so I think they're starting to remove some of that stuff in preparation for Tom Sawyer Island disappearing. In addition to that, you can also find one of the Mike Fing Killboats underwater. That's right. If you go over to Castaway Cay, still to this day, you can find one of the Mike Fing Killboats down there. In addition to that, you can also find one of the submarines from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea there as well. And you can go down there and you can touch them. what I do every time I'm over at Castaway Keep. I love it. I really do. And I'm just like, oh, I remember. I don't know if I ever went on Mike Ping scale boats. They was around when I was alive and when I was at Disney World, but I do not remember it ever being there. But if I could take my time machine, I would go on Mike Ping scale boats. I would go on Baby Crockett's canoes, but I am positive that I've been on that before. I do have a memory of that. And I would go on Mickey Mouse Review. Mickey Mouse Review is the one attraction at Magic Kingdom that I've always been like, I wish I would have experienced that. I remember Legend of the Lion King, but I remember only seeing it like one time. And I remember my little brother really liked it. So when he was young and my next oldest brother, back in the 90s when like parents would just say like, just we'll meet you at this specific time at this specific space. And we had no cell phones. We didn't have walkie talkies. We just went out into the world and hoped we didn't die. I remember my parents going to Legend of the Lion King. They're like, oh, Tyler really wants to do Legend of the Lion King. Do you want to do Legend of the Lion King? Oh yeah, Eric, you're late to the party. we already got it over here. But yeah, we went through, and my brother wanted to always do Legend of the Lion King. And I remember my other brother and I being like, oh, like we're gonna go do like Space Mountain, or probably not Space Mountain, because my brother who's older than me was scared of that stuff too. My dad and I went on Space Mountain. I remember he was the first one I went on Space Mountain with. And then my dad was the first person I went on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad with. I do remember going on now I'm just going through Brent Dodge history. I'm looking like through old attractions. My dad and I went on a lot of rides together because my dad would like he always likes he doesn't like love thrill rides, but he tolerates them more than anyone else in my family. So him and I used to do like Big Thunder Mountain and Space Mountain when I was little and everyone else was scared. Like literally, my two older brothers were scared. My little brother was scared. My mom, still to this day, terrified. So I remember him and I going on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I do remember a very vivid thing of my mom and my oldest brother on the Skyway bucket. I don't know. I just remember us going over, and I just remember looking down at the buildings. It's crazy. If you could go back in time, this is the question to you guys out there. If you could go back in time to Magic Kingdom at any point, when would you go, and what one ride? You can only do one ride. What one ride would you go on? Because like part of me would say like I would love to go back and go Mickey Mouse Review because I've never experienced it. But then at the same time, it's like I remember our whole family going on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it would be cool to like do a time machine and go back in time and go on 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. My mom, like she gets scared on Dumbo. Her and my nephew went on Dumbo last year, and my nephew was like, "Grandma was scared." My mom's favorite attraction is the stores. Like her favorite attraction. She'll agree with this. Her favorite attraction is the Emporium, or any shop. That's my mom's favorite attraction. Now I would love to go back in time. I would love to, or if I could go back in time, I would. There's a few things I would love to see, but I would love to go like Mickey Mouse Review. I think would be fun. It'd be cool to go to opening day. She does like the Skyliner. She'll go on the Skyliner. I think she gets scared though when you start coming down towards the other vehicle. But I think a lot of people do, and I don't get it. I'm just like, yeah, they're not gonna kill us. And then that one time the people did crash, and then I'm like, oh, maybe they will kill you. And people watch. There you go. See, my mom's talking right now. She likes the people watch. Yeah, no, if I could go back in time, I think Mickey Mouse Review would be the one that I would do. Because I never did. There's a few attractions that I never got to do just because I wasn't alive. I would like to experience extraterrestrial alien encounter again. I remember going on that. I remember being scared, but I also remember enjoying it. I don't know. It'd be cool to go back and ride some things. There's a few things that I would never go back and do again. I would never go back and do Stitch. Like if they said if you can go back in time, you can ride every ride except for one. What's the one ride at Magic Kingdom you wouldn't ride? Stitch's Great Escape. Hands down, that would be the one that I would not want to do. Okay, but I think that is going to be wrapping up our broadcast for today, unless, let's take a look. We're still at 7,939 subscribers. So we're going to be wrapping this up right here. I want to hit 8,000 so bad. So keep on throwing your friends over here to subscribe as well. But thank you, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed my hour-long ramble about the history of the Magic Kingdom. I hope you guys didn't fall asleep. And if you did, well, I apologize. Or you're welcome. Thank you, everyone out there, though. I hope everyone out there is having a great night. As always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. That's it. That's all you get. If you're one of the Patreon pals in the chat room right now, give us an oh yeah. Oh wait, and as always, remember that anything can happen if you let it. Until next time, have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Are they gone? Are they gone? Oh, good. My cheeks are killing me. I just can't stand this game.